Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Sun Moon Audiobook, the channel where we share wisdom and inspiring book journeys to help you grow and develop your best self, inside and out. The night was quiet when the first snow fell soft, deliberate, like the world whispering a secret into the dark. And in that hush, it struck me how often the moments that shape our lives arrive quietly, almost invisibly, brushing our path like snowflakes we barely notice until the ground beneath us is transformed. That is what this journey is about. Those almost hidden forces, those patterns beneath the patterns, the ones that help some of us rise in ways that look like miracles, but are really mosaics of chance, culture, timing, and human connection. Malcolm Gladwell has always had a gift for walking into the ordinary and finding the extraordinary folded inside it. In Outliers, he invites us into a different way of seeing success, not as a solitary heroic ascent, but as something woven. And as we step into this narration together, imagine we're not dissecting a book, but sitting in a warm room, late at night, letting its meaning wash over us as stories, truths, and quiet realizations. Let's breathe into the first idea, the way opportunity blooms in the subtle creases of time. There's a story at the heart of this idea, one Gladwell brings alive, about young hockey players in Canada. At first, it feels almost trivial. Why does it matter when a child is born? But the deeper you look, the stranger and clearer it becomes. Most elite youth hockey players have birthdays in the first few months of the year. January, February, March. It isn't talent alone. It isn't passion alone. It's the simple, almost mundane power of cutoff dates. A kid born in January is older, slightly bigger, slightly stronger in those early years. Coaches notice. That child is praised, chosen, nurtured. Opportunity feeds on opportunity, compounding like interest until one day that slight head start has blossomed into excellence that looks like destiny. We rise through the quiet patterns. The mantra whispers. Remember that. It will return. This idea can feel unsettling. We want to believe success is pure merit. We want to believe the world is fair. But Gladwell gently nudges us to widen our gaze, not to diminish accomplishment, but to understand it more fully. Because when you understand the conditions that help people bloom, you begin to recognize the conditions you can shape in your own life. And more importantly, the ones you can shape for others. Think of someone like Serena Williams. Her strength and brilliance are unmistakable, but woven beneath them is a layered landscape of early exposure, intentional coaching, a family that created an ecosystem of belief and discipline. Or consider Bill Gates, not just a genius with a gift for computation, but a teenager at a time when very few people had access to a computer, and miraculously, he did. His school had one. Later, he gained access to another, and another. These weren't average opportunities. They were rare, and he met them with curiosity and hunger. You, who are listening right now, pause for just a moment. Think of one opportunity, no matter how small, that became something bigger because you were in the right place at the right time. Think of the teacher who saw something in you, the friend who introduced you to a passion, the moment life invited you to grow, even if you didn't realize it until much later. The world shapes us as we shape it. Our second mantra, let it echo gently. Another thread in this tapestry of outliers is the deep, complicated dance between talent and time. If you've heard of the 10,000-hour rule, you know this part of the story: practice, repetition, immersion. But what Gladwell invites us to notice isn't merely the discipline, it's the access. To become exceptional at anything, you must be given the chance to practice, and practice deeply. It's not simply that people work hard, it's that they often have space to work hard. This is why musicians like the Beatles or athletes like Kobe Bryant seem almost otherworldly. They lived inside their craft. They didn't just practice. They practiced in contexts rich with fuel. Long Hamburg nights playing music until their fingers ached. Dawn workouts before school. Hours layered on hours until mastery became a second skin. But here's where Gladwell leans in a little closer. Mastery is not magic. It is environment meeting effort. It is time meeting talent. It is support meeting desire. And for many people, the missing piece is not ability, but opportunity to accumulate those hours at all. At this point in the story, something inside us begins to shift. We start seeing the world with softened eyes. Instead of saying, they're just naturally gifted, we begin asking, what allowed them to grow that gift? Even as we explore this, a sense of tenderness emerges because many listeners carry the quiet ache of feeling left behind. Maybe you've wondered if you missed your chance. Maybe you've compared yourself to others who got a head start. Maybe you felt the sting of believing success requires something you never had. Before we go further into Gladwell's next ideas, let's create a gentle space around that feeling. There is a moment in the journey where understanding becomes healing. This is where we pause, where we admit with compassion that some of us were born into ecosystems that nurtured excellence, while others were planted in hardened soil. And yet hardened soil can still grow wildflowers. Some of the strongest roots are the ones that push through stone. If you feel behind, or late, or overlooked, hear this. The story is not over. The arc is wider than you think. And you are allowed to begin here, exactly as you are. We rise through the quiet patterns. Let it return to you like a breath. Another core idea in Gladwell's exploration is heritage, the invisible cultural scripts that teach us how to navigate the world. Some cultures teach assertiveness. Some teach humility. Some teach obedience. Others innovation. These patterns, too, shape success. Gladwell tells the story of cultural legacies in unexpected places like airline accidents. When researchers looked deeply into certain crashes, they found that communication patterns, deeply influenced by cultural norms, played a role. In some cultures, hierarchy is so respected that a co-pilot might hesitate to correct a captain. That hesitation, born not from incompetence, but from reverence, can have devastating consequences. But the lesson isn't about blame. It's about awareness. Cultural strengths can become vulnerabilities, and vulnerabilities can be transformed into new strengths if we learn to see them. Again, the mantra, the world shapes us as we shape it. This isn't just about pilots or corporations. It's about families, friendships, workplaces, every space where communication is the bridge between intention and impact. Imagine a child growing up in a home where questions are discouraged. That child enters school timid, withholding curiosity. Now imagine another child whose parents encourage endless inquiry, the type who asks why 20 times before breakfast. These early scripts shape confidence, motivation, and courage. They determine how comfortable we are asking for help, challenging ideas, stepping into leadership. This is why Gladwell's work feels so deeply human. He's not saying success is predetermined. He's saying, look at the forces beneath your feet. Look at the wind behind the people you admire. Look at the invisible scaffolding of culture, time, opportunity, support. And then, imagine what happens when you begin to build your own scaffolding intentionally. There is one more piece I want to touch before we pause this first section: the miracle of meaningful work. Gladwell reminds us that people thrive when their work feels purposeful, when they experience autonomy, complexity, and a connection between effort and reward. Not just labor, but meaningful labor. This is why some children raised in certain environments flourish academically. Their parents model a belief that hard work is not punishment, but empowerment. They see learning as a ladder, not a chore. And here is where my own voice enters. Once, and only once, I learned this truth the first time I stayed up all night working on something that mattered, really mattered to me. Time stopped feeling heavy. Effort stopped feeling like sacrifice. It felt like building a cathedral one stone at a time. Meaning transforms labor into devotion. You, listening now, have your own cathedral waiting. Before we continue, let's allow the weight and warmth of these ideas to settle, the snowflakes of understanding gathering on your shoulders, reshaping the landscape around you in quiet increments. Sometimes growth arrives not as thunder, but as a soft stirring like waking at dawn and realizing the world has shifted a little while you slept. As we continue this journey through the soul of Outliers, Let that gentle shift be our guide. Think of these ideas not as theories, but as companions walking beside us, whispering reminders of the quiet forces shaping our lives. When Gladwell moves deeper into the heart of his exploration, he turns toward one of the most powerful and sometimes painful truths about human achievement. Where we come from matters. Not just geographically, not just historically, but emotionally, spiritually, culturally. We inherit stories long before we write our own. And some stories carry unexpected gifts. One of the most striking threads in this tapestry is the tale of the culture of honor. Gladwell looks at families from the Appalachian region, tracing behaviors back through generations to the Scotch-Irish herding cultures of Europe. What seems like temperament fiery, proud, ready to defend one's dignity turns out to be the echo of an ancient way of life, where livestock theft meant life or death, and reputation was protection. These echoes live inside us, even when we don't realize it. You may carry the generosity of your grandparents, the resilience of ancestors who survived storms you'll never know, the fears of a lineage that learned to hide, the confidence of a lineage that learned to speak. Our histories speak through us softly but persistently. We rise through the quiet patterns. It returns again, steady as breath. Gladwell invites us to understand these inherited patterns not as boundaries, but as blueprints. Once you see them, you can choose how to work with them, how to soften them, transform them, honor them, or outgrow them. Because every legacy, even the difficult ones, can be reshaped with awareness. And awareness is where transformation begins. This leads us into one of the most tender pieces of the Outliers landscape, the gift of meaningful opportunity. Not any opportunity, meaningful opportunity. There's a moment in the book where Gladwell talks about the extraordinary number of successful Jewish lawyers in New York who came of age in the mid-20th century. At first glance, it might seem mysterious. Why so many? But as he unravels the story, it becomes clear that these men were shaped by a precise intersection of timing, cultural tradition, and systemic exclusion. Jewish immigrants often worked in garment trades, where they cultivated a skill set, hard work, independence, entrepreneurial thinking that would later translate perfectly into the emerging field of corporate litigation. At the same time, the old establishment law firms dismissed dirty litigation work, leaving it open to outsiders. What looked like luck was actually alignment, cultural values meeting historical timing. The world shapes us as we shape it. These stories aren't just about history. They are reminders that success emerges when opportunity meets preparation, and that marginalized paths sometimes become the very roads to brilliance. You, who are listening right now, may know what it feels like to walk a path that wasn't the main road, to find yourself on the edges, improvising your way forward. There is power in that improvisation. There is insight in that outsider's vantage point. Sometimes the back door becomes the doorway to your destiny. Another powerful revelation Gladwell brings to life is the idea of practical intelligence. Not the kind measured by IQ tests or academic exams, but the kind that helps a person navigate social situations, advocate for themselves, speak to authority with confidence. It is an intelligence often taught in subtle, daily moments by families who encourage children to ask questions, reason aloud, negotiate gently, or challenge respectfully. Some children grow up learning that adults are partners. Others grow up learning adults are unquestionable. This difference might seem small, but it shapes futures. Who asks for help, who speaks up in uncertainty, who negotiates for better possibilities. Practical intelligence is the quiet engine beneath many success stories. Gladwell describes how children from more privileged backgrounds often receive repeated reinforcement. It's okay to ask. Here's how to talk to your doctor. Speak clearly. Stand tall. Meanwhile, other children may carry an inner script of silence, of waiting, enduring, or obeying. These scripts shape confidence more than raw ability ever could. And this is where the heart of the book opens wide. The recognition that potential is not a seed planted in isolation. It needs water, sunlight, soil, seasons, caretaking. Without those things, even the strongest seed cannot bloom. But with them, even the most unlikely seed can astonish the world. There is a point halfway through this journey where we must pause, where the emotional weight of these realizations gathers like a storm inside the chest. This is that moment, because understanding these truths means confronting the ways life has always been fair, the ways some of us were born into abundance while others were born into scarcity, the ways systems shape us long before we shape them. It can stir grief, frustration, longing. It can bring forward the ache of roads we didn't know how to walk, doors we didn't know how to open, opportunities we never even knew existed. If you're feeling that ache, breathe. You're not alone. There is healing in naming the truth. There is strength in acknowledging the uneven ground beneath our feet. And there is incredible power in realizing that the story is still unfolding, that the future contains new doors, new timing, new ways to grow. Let that awareness settle softly, like a hand on your shoulder. Now, let's rise gently from this pause, because here is the quiet, luminous truth Gladwell leaves us with. Once you understand the forces that shape success, you can begin to shape your own landscape. Not perfectly, not immediately, but deliberately, compassionately. We rise through the quiet patterns. Yes, the world shapes us, but we shape it too, with every choice, every habit, every request for help, every hour invested in our craft, every time we show up even when doubt curls around our ankles. Gladwell's stories remind us that success is rarely a solo act. It is a symphony of family, culture, mentors, timing, effort, luck, and persistence. And it asks us to rethink our definitions of greatness, to stop idolizing the myth of the self-made individual and instead celebrate the beauty of interdependence. Think of someone like J.K. Rowling, not an overnight success, but a person buoyed by teachers, friends, benefit systems, libraries, and communities who supported her, knowingly or unknowingly. Or consider someone like Steve Jobs, not a lone genius, but a visionary shaped by adoptive parents, early electronics mentors, a specific historical moment in Silicon Valley, and countless collaborators. When we recognize these patterns, we stop asking, "Why can't I be like them?" and instead begin asking, "What seeds were planted for them and what seeds can I plant now?" This shift is everything. Because the moment you realize success is woven, not spontaneous, you gain the ability to weave your own pathway with intention. You can seek mentors. You can create your own 10,000 hours. You can shape your environment. You can ask for guidance. You can notice opportunities others overlook. You can cultivate practical intelligence through practice and community. And you can build meaning into your work one small ritual at a time. As we approach the next stretch of this journey, imagine yourself gathering these insights like smooth stones, each one warm, each one grounding you, each one reminding you that your story is not fixed, that your origin is not your conclusion, that your path, however winding, can still lead to extraordinary places. Well, walk further soon. There are more truths waiting about meaningful labor, legacy, persistence, and the invisible networks that cradle every triumph. But for now, pause with this. You are not behind. You are becoming. Before we continue, take a breath with me. Let it fall softly into your chest. Let the air gather the pieces of the journey so far, the revelations about timing, the invisible scaffolding of opportunity, the cultural legacies we inherit, the tender ache of realizing our paths were shaped long before we could name them. Hold all of that gently. We're walking deeper now, but not into complexity, into clarity, because what Gladwell offers next is something like a lantern illumination for the spaces where we most often feel lost. It's the reminder that greatness isn't a lightning strike. It's an ecosystem, a constellation of human moments stretched across years, woven through relationships, repeated in rituals, rooted in community. And when we understand that, we stop seeing success as a lonely mountain climb and start seeing it as something shared, something cultivated, something that grows in the warmth of connection. Let's step into one of the most resonant ideas in Outliers, the power of meaningful work. Gladwell paints a picture of hard work that doesn't feel like drudgery, a kind of labor that asks for your mind, your heart, your creativity. Not tasks that merely demand obedience, but challenges that invite engagement. Work with depth, autonomy, purpose. Work where effort translates into outcome, where the hours you invest shape the reward you receive. Work, not as a burden, but as a calling. Think of the rice paddies in Asia, the care, the precision, the devotion. These farmers cultivated not just crops, but a mindset. Diligence, patience, persistence. A worldview that whispers, if I work carefully, thoughtfully, consistently, I can shape the harvest. Generations inhaled that belief. It's no coincidence that communities rooted in these traditions often excel in systems requiring similar traits like mathematics, with its layered logic, its gradual build toward understanding. You can almost feel that truth humming in your bones. Meaning doesn't come from ease. It comes from engagement. Remember our mantra: the world shapes us as we shape it. Meaningful work shapes us from the inside out. It makes us courageous. It teaches us discipline wrapped in joy. It calls us higher without demanding we abandon ourselves. When work holds meaning, persistence becomes natural, not forced. Yet there is something exquisite in Gladwell's insight here. Meaningful work is often a privilege before it becomes a choice. Families who model autonomy, complexity, and reward pass those values down like heirlooms. Children raised in those ecosystems learn to see challenges as invitations, not obstacles. But here's where the conversation deepens in a very human way. Meaningful work is also something we can create for ourselves, even in small, quiet ways. Even when life feels heavy. Even when we feel uncertain. Meaning is not the gift of the fortunate, it is the craft of the intentional. Let's explore the next thread. Persistence, not as blind exhaustion, but as an outgrowth of opportunity, support, and belief. Gladwell leans into stories about people whose persistence looks mythical from afar. But when you examine their lives up close, you find layers of reinforcement. Teachers who said, "Try again." Parents who said, "You're capable." Communities that said, "We believe in you." Structures that said, "Here is your chance." And for some, those structures were missing. That's where the ache enters, the recognition that persistence often flourishes where support already exists. But this isn't where your story ends, because what Gladwell ultimately reveals is that awareness becomes a form of empowerment. Once you understand the machinery of success, you can begin to build your own. You can create micro-support systems, micro-opportunities, micro-moments of encouragement. You can seek communities that echo the beliefs you want to grow. You can curate environments that feed your effort instead of draining it. This is the part where the narration bends tenderly toward you, because you may be carrying old stories, old wounds, old whispers that told you persistence is pointless, or that you're too late, or that your dreams are too big for the soil you stand on. But hear this softly. We rise through the quiet patterns. If you change the pattern, even slightly, you change the rise. Gladwell's next insight carries this truth into the realm of legacy. He examines families, generations, and the invisible curriculum passed down through habits, values, and survival strategies. Some legacies empower, some limit, some protect, some unintentionally confine. But all legacies can be rewritten, renewed, or expanded. This is where the emotional cord deepens, because legacy is not just about where we come from, it's about what we choose to continue and what we choose to transform. Even the painful parts of our history can become fuel when held with awareness instead of shame. You, listening right now, may be the first in your family to break a cycle, or the first to believe in a dream beyond survival, or the first to call your work meaningful, or the first to imagine a life in which your gifts are honored rather than hidden. Gladwell teaches us that those who become outliers are rarely just exceptionally talented. They are people who stand at intersections of history, culture, timing, labor, passion, and belief. And sometimes, they are the first to change the direction of their lineage. From here, the narrative in Outliers moves toward the idea that success isn't just based on individual brilliance, it often emerges from cultural circumstances that reward specific forms of intelligence. Take the example of legacy and mathematical excellence among some Asian cultures. Gladwell connects linguistic structure, educational practices, and agricultural traditions to illuminate why students from these backgrounds often show remarkable aptitude. This isn't about innate ability. It's about inherited mindsets, about centuries of cultural rhythm, about the mantra embedded in rice farming traditions. With diligence, the harvest comes. Even this echoes our emotional anchor. We rise through the quiet patterns. Patterns in language, patterns in discipline, patterns in family, patterns in culture, patterns in opportunity. But here's something beautiful. You can choose your patterns. You can choose your practice. You can choose your rhythm. You can choose what you cultivate. This is also where the narrative intersects with faith in community. Gladwell highlights how communal support, shared struggle, and collective effort play roles in shaping extraordinary outcomes. People do not rise alone, not truly. Behind every triumph is a network sometimes visible, sometimes hidden. Think of someone like Maya Angelou. Her voice rose because mentors guided her. Communities embraced her, and her own persistence became a torch. Or think of someone like Lionel Messi, just a prodigy, but a child supported by a club that paid for his medical treatments when his family couldn't. Outliers are nurtured, not born. Now let's shift gently toward the listener in this intimate, late-night conversation. There may be a part of you that feels ordinary, unremarkable, blended into the background. But what Outliers teaches us when we peel back its layers is that the seeds of extraordinary lives often begin in ordinary soil. The difference lies in nourishment, in small opportunities, in meaningful work, in persistence shaped by purpose, in the courage to shift your environment even 1 degree. And now, as we approach the final movement of this section, let's step into something practical, something you can carry with you when this narration ends. Something small enough to begin today, yet powerful enough to echo through your life. Small, doable actions. Inspired by these insights, 1. Identify one meaningful task that lights even a small spark. Just one. Something that engages you, not drains you. Tend it like a seed. Give it 20 minutes a day. 2. Find or create one micro opportunity, a place to learn, a mentor to reach out to, a community that aligns with your growth. Opportunity doesn't always arrive. Sometimes, you build it. 3. Practice practical intelligence. Once this week, ask a question you'd normally hold back. Advocate gently for yourself. Speak with clarity. Stand in your own authority. 4. Re-examine your inherited stories. Which beliefs support your future? Which ones need rewriting? Healing begins with naming. 5. Build your 10,000 hours with compassion. Not with pressure, not with perfection, just steady devotion. One stone at a time toward your cathedral. You are not behind. You are not disqualified. You are simply in the middle of your unfolding. Soon, we'll close this journey with a whisper of hope and invitation to step into your own outlier story. But for now, sit with this truth. The extraordinary is not reserved. It is cultivated. And you, exactly as you are capable of cultivating it. When you're ready, we'll continue to the final chapter of this narration, towards sunrise, seed, and ripple. The air feels different as we step into this final stretch of our journey together, lighter somehow, as if the path has widened and the horizon is finally coming into view. You've walked through the heart of Outliers with openness and courage, exploring the hidden architecture of success, the quiet forces that shape our rise, and the tender truth that greatness is rarely born in isolation. Now, as we near the end, we arrive at one of the most luminous ideas Malcolm Gladwell offers us, the reminder that even the most astonishing triumphs come from stories built slowly, threads woven over time, shaped by people, culture, opportunity, and choice. And in this last movement, Gladwell brings forward one more example, one that crystallizes everything we've explored. He tells the story of students in a small town, rice paddies and mathematical excellence, and the cultural inheritance that encourages perseverance in the face of complexity. But then he turns our attention to another profound example, the tale of KIPP Academy. KIPP, a charter school serving students from underserved communities, shows what happens when environment, opportunity, and meaningful work combine. Children who might otherwise be written off are given extended school days, devoted teachers, rigorous challenges, and support systems that nurture perseverance. Suddenly, the disparities shrink. The distance between potential and achievement narrows. Children flourish, not because they were inherently different, but because the soil beneath them changed. This final insight echoes everything we've walked through. Environment shapes destiny. Opportunity alters trajectory. Support transforms struggle. And if that's true for a school, it's true for a life. We rise through the quiet patterns. We rise as the world shapes us and as we shape it. That is the heartbeat of Outliers. But before we step into reflection, let's return to something simple, something human. The recognition that your story, too, contains hundreds of invisible moments, support you didn't notice at the time, limitations you've slowly outgrown, strengths you inherited without realizing it. You carry the echoes of ancestors who dreamed, survived, built, broke, mended, and believed in ways you may never fully understand. You are not separate from the forces Gladwell describes. You are a living chapter of them. And now, at this point in our narration, we turn towards something deeply personal, not about the past, but about possibility. Because Gladwell doesn't write Outliers to leave us with analysis. He writes to remind us that awareness is agency. Once you see the threads, you can begin weaving with intention. Let's talk about you. You, listening quietly, perhaps feeling the weight of your own unfinished dreams. You, who may have wondered whether you are too late, too different, too overshadowed, too constrained by circumstances you didn't choose. You, who may carry an ache of potential trembling beneath the surface of your days. Hear this in the deepest part of your chest. You are not made to replicate someone else's success. You are made to uncover your own. And that success, your success, does not need to look like a bursting spotlight or a mountaintop roar. It can look like a slow build, a careful cultivation, a quiet devotion, a meaningful practice, a deliberate rewiring of your environment, a gentle reshaping of inherited stories, a steady layering of hours towards something that makes your soul lift its head and say, yes, this. Everything Gladwell uncovers from the cutoff dates to the cultural legacies, from meaningful work to the 10,000 hours, from timing to community is not a formula. It's an invitation to stop blaming yourself for what was never in your control, an invitation to embrace what is in your control now, an invitation to rise in ways aligned with your own rhythm. Let's step gently into the final emotional arc of this journey. How you can apply these truths in the quiet, intimate spaces of your own life. Small, soulful applications. You can begin today. Gladwell shows us again and again that remarkable lives are built on small, consistent acts, not massive bursts of brilliance. So, here are ways to begin rewriting your internal ecosystem, not with pressure, but with compassion. 1. Build your own practice landscape. You don't need to create 10,000 hours overnight. Instead, design a tiny ritual 15 or 20 minutes a day devoted to something that matters to you. Consistency is the drumbeat of mastery. Gentle repetition is the doorway to transformation. 2. Seek micro opportunities, just one a week. Email someone who inspires you. Join an online workshop. Ask a thoughtful question. Step into a new room, digital or physical, where your growth is welcome. Opportunity often begins as one small yes. 3. Transform one inherited belief. Whatever your family, culture, or past taught you about worth, possibility, or limitation, choose one belief to re-examine. Ask yourself, does this belief grow, me, or shrink me? If it shrinks you, rewrite it. Even gently. 4. Curate your support network. No success is solitary. Find people who echo the version of you you're becoming not the version you've already outgrown. One encouraging voice can shift the arc of an entire year. 5. Choose meaningful work, not perfect work. Meaning doesn't require greatness. It requires engagement. Find tasks that hold your attention like a soft flame. Give them space to breathe. Honor the moments that feel alive. This is how devotion grows. Now, before we close this narration, let's step into one last emotional reflection. You have walked through these ideas with an open heart. You've allowed yourself to see how success is shaped not by miracles or destiny, but by circumstances, culture, persistence, support, and mindful creation. You've explored the patterns beneath the patterns, and you've begun to imagine new ones for yourself. Let's gather everything we've learned and place it gently in your hands. Success is not a lightning strike. You are not waiting for a storm. You are cultivating a garden, and gardens grow quietly, steadily, faithfully, one sunrise at a time. So here is your closing invitation, the final metaphor rising like a hush before dawn. See yourself as a seed. Not because you are small, but because you are full. Not because you are buried, but because you are rooted. Not because you are waiting, but because you are becoming. And every hour of practice, every person who believes in you, every cultural value you heal or honor, every opportunity you create becomes sunlight, water, soil, and season. Your growth is already happening underground. Your emergence is inevitable. Your story is still expanding. And you, yes, you're capable of becoming an outlier in your own life. A ripple becoming a wave, a seed becoming a forest, a sunrise breaking over the quiet horizon of the self. Before we close, thank you for listening, truly listening with your heart open and your spirit willing. If this narration moved something inside you, if it softened an ache or sparked a thought or stirred a dream, I invite you to share it. Like, share, comment, subscribe, because your voice, your reflection, your presence might be the encouragement someone else has been waiting for. Let your insight become part of the ripple,